Good evening, friends. Today I want to talk to you about something that might surprise you. It's a lesson about the dangers of being too nice. Now, don't misunderstand me. Kindness is one of the most beautiful qualities you can possess. But if we're not careful, being overly nice can lead to exhaustion, resentment, and even a loss of our God-given purpose. Let me share something with you that might just change the way you approach life. Being kind is one of the most beautiful qualities you can have. It reflects the heart of God, shows love to those around you, and brings light into a world that often feels dark. But here's what we need to understand. Kindness doesn't mean we have to let go of our strength. It doesn't mean we have to let people take advantage of us or that we have to say yes to everything and everyone. Sometimes we think that if we're not bending over backward to make others happy, we're not being good people. But let me tell you, that's not true. God didn't call you to live a life where you're constantly drained, always putting yourself last, and never standing up for what's right. He called you to live with balance, to be kind, but also to be strong. Being too nice can often look like saying yes when deep down you know you should say no. Maybe someone asks for your time, your energy, or your resources, and even though you're already stretched thin, you say, sure, I can do that. Why? Because you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want them to think you're selfish or unkind. But what happens when you do this over and over again? You end up exhausted, frustrated, and even resentful. That's not what God wants for you. He wants you to have a kind heart, but He also wants you to have a discerning spirit. Just because you can do something doesn't always mean you should do it. Sometimes the best way to love others and yourself is by saying no. No to the things that steal your peace. No to the things that pull you away from your purpose. No to the things that God never asked you to carry. You see, kindness and strength go hand in hand. When you're truly walking in kindness, it comes from a place of confidence and peace, not guilt or fear. Jesus is our ultimate example of this. He was compassionate, loving, and kind. But He was also strong. He didn't let people manipulate Him or dictate His actions. When He needed to step away and rest, He did. When He needed to stand firm and speak the truth, He didn't hold back. His kindness was powerful because it was grounded in strength. Maybe you've been too nice in certain areas of your life. You've let people push your boundaries or make you feel like you have to prove your worth by always being available. Let me encourage you today, you don't have to live that way. It's okay to say, I can't do that right now. It's okay to prioritize your health, your family, and your relationship with God. It's okay to protect the peace that God has given you. When you balance kindness with strength, you're not only honoring yourself, you're honoring God. You're showing Him that you trust His plan for your life, even if it means disappointing a few people along the way. Not everyone will understand your boundaries, and that's okay. You're not called to make everyone happy. You're called to fulfill your God-given purpose. So as you move forward, ask yourself, am I being kind out of love or am I being nice out of fear? Am I giving from a place of abundance or am I giving from a place of emptiness? Remember, you can't pour into others if your own cup is empty. And you don't have to feel guilty about taking care of yourself. That's not selfishness, that's wisdom. Let this be the year you embrace kindness in its truest form, a kindness that is rooted in strength, discernment, and love. A kindness that reflects God's heart, but also respects the limits He's placed on your life. When you do, you'll find a new sense of freedom and joy. You'll be able to give generously without feeling depleted. You'll be able to love others without losing yourself. And you'll discover that God's plans for you are so much greater than anything you could ever achieve by trying to please everyone. Today, decide to step into this balance. Be kind, but be strong. Love deeply, but don't let go of your own peace. Trust that God is guiding you and know that it's okay to say no when you need to. When you live this way, you're not only living with kindness, you're living with wisdom, strength, and the fullness of God's blessing. And that's the kind of life He's always wanted for you. Let me tell you something, friends. One of the biggest traps we can fall into is trying to please everyone. It's so easy to slip into that mindset, isn't it? You think if I can just make them happy, if I can keep the peace, everything will be okay. But the truth is, when you live your life trying to please everyone, you'll never feel fulfilled. You'll end up worn out, frustrated, and far from the life God has planned for you. God didn't put you here to live for the approval of others. He put you here to fulfill a purpose, a calling that's unique to you. But if you spend all your time trying to keep everyone else happy, you'll miss out on that purpose. You can't fully step into what God has for you if you're constantly worried about what others think. Let me ask you, have you ever agreed to do something you didn't want to do just to avoid disappointing someone? Maybe it was helping out with an event when your schedule was already packed. Maybe it was staying silent when you knew you should speak up. Or maybe it was going along with someone else's plans, even though you felt God leading you in a different direction. You did it because you didn't want to upset them. You didn't want them to think less of you. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with helping others or being considerate of their feelings. But when you start compromising your peace, your values, or your calling just to make someone else happy, that's when you've crossed the line. You're not helping them, and you're certainly not helping yourself. You see, people-pleasing can become a cycle. The more you say yes when you should say no, the more people will expect from you. And the more they expect, the harder it becomes to set boundaries. Before you know it, you're overwhelmed carrying burdens you were never meant to carry. The Bible says in Galatians 1:10, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. That verse is a powerful reminder that our first priority is to please God, not people. When you make His approval your focus, it sets you free from the pressure of trying to be everything to everyone. Not everyone will understand your decisions. Not everyone will like the boundaries you set. And that's okay. You're not called to live according to their expectations. You're called to live according to God's purpose for your life. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're running a race, but instead of staying on your own track, you keep veering off to help others on theirs. You're so busy trying to make sure everyone else is doing okay that you forget about your own race. By the time you look up, you're completely off course. That's what happens when you live to please others. You lose sight of your own path, and you end up missing out on the blessings and opportunities God has for you. Now, some people might not like it when you start saying no. They might not understand why you're setting boundaries or making changes, but you don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't have to feel guilty for prioritizing your peace and purpose. When you live to please God, He'll take care of the rest. Think about Jesus. He loved people deeply, but He didn't live to please them. When the crowds wanted Him to perform miracles just for show, He walked away. When His own disciples didn't understand His decisions, He stayed true to His mission. Jesus wasn't swayed by people's opinions because He was focused on fulfilling God's will. In the same way, you need to stay focused on the path God has set before you. It's okay to help others, but don't let their needs or expectations pull you away from your calling. When you let go of the need to please everyone, you'll find a new sense of freedom. You'll be able to make decisions with confidence, knowing that you're following God's lead, not trying to win the approval of others. So today, I want to encourage you to let go of the pressure to please everyone. Trust that God's opinion is the only one that truly matters. And as you make Him your priority, you'll discover a life of peace, joy, and purpose, a life that's far more fulfilling than anything you could ever achieve by trying to keep everyone else happy. God has great plans for you, and they don't require anyone else's approval. Step into those plans with confidence, knowing that He is guiding you every step of the way. Let me remind you of something important. Your heart is one of the most valuable things you have. It's the center of your emotions, your energy, and your peace. That's why Proverbs 4:23 tells us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. But here's the challenge. Many of us spend so much time worrying about others, taking care of their needs, and saying yes to things we don't even want to do, that we forget to guard our own hearts. We let people and situations drain us, and before we know it, we're running on empty. God didn't design you to live like that. He wants you to live with joy, peace, and strength. But you can't do that if you're constantly letting others overstep your boundaries. Sometimes guarding your heart means setting limits. It means saying, I love you, but I can't do that. It means recognizing when something isn't healthy for you and having the courage to step away. You see, guarding your heart doesn't mean you're selfish. It doesn't mean you're unkind. It means you value the gift God has given you. Your time, your energy, your emotions, they're all precious. If you let everyone take a piece of your heart without ever filling it back up, you'll end up feeling drained, frustrated, and far from the person God created you to be. Let me ask you, how often do you find yourself saying yes when you really want to say no? Maybe it's a family member who's always asking for help, even though you're already stretched thin. Maybe it's a friend who constantly needs your advice but never seems to be there when you need support. Or maybe it's at work where you keep taking on more responsibilities because you don't want to disappoint anyone. Now, there's nothing wrong with helping others. God calls us to be kind, compassionate, and generous. But He also calls us to be wise. If you're giving to the point where you're exhausted and overwhelmed, that's not wisdom, that's imbalance. Think about Jesus. He was the ultimate example of kindness and love, but even He set boundaries. When the crowds followed Him everywhere, demanding His time and attention, there were moments when He stepped away to rest. He didn't heal every single person He encountered. He didn't say yes to every request. He knew that to fulfill His purpose, He had to guard His heart and stay focused on what God had called Him to do. In the same way, you need to protect the peace and strength God has given you. That means being intentional about who and what you allow into your life. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. Some people bring negativity, drama, or unrealistic expectations, and if you're not careful, those things can pull you away from your joy and purpose. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say, I need some time for myself. It's okay to prioritize your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. When you do, you're not being unkind, you're being wise. You're creating space for God to fill you up so that you can give to others from a place of abundance, not emptiness. I know it's not always easy. Some people won't understand. They might get upset or try to make you feel guilty. But you don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't owe anyone an apology for protecting your peace. Remember, you're not called to please everyone. You're called to follow God's plan for your life. When you guard your heart, you're positioning yourself to live with clarity and purpose. You'll have the energy to focus on the things that matter most: your relationship with God, your family, your health, and the dreams He's placed in your heart. You'll be able to love others more fully because you're no longer running on empty. So today, take a moment to evaluate your life. Are there areas where you've been saying yes too much? Are there people or situations that are draining your energy and stealing your peace? It's time to set some boundaries. It's time to guard your heart. God has amazing things in store for you, but you can't step into them if you're weighed down by things He never intended you to carry. Let go of the guilt, the fear of disappointing others, and the need to always say yes. Trust that as you honor your own heart, God will take care of the rest. When you start living this way, you'll notice a difference. You'll feel lighter, more peaceful, and more focused. You'll have the strength to face challenges and the clarity to pursue your purpose. And most importantly, you'll be living in alignment with the life God has called you to live, a life of joy, freedom, and fulfillment. Let me tell you something, friends. Not everyone is going to understand the decisions you make when you start living according to God's purpose for your life. Not everyone will celebrate your victories or agree with your boundaries. And you know what? That's okay. You don't need everyone's approval to fulfill your destiny. You only need God's approval. It's human nature to want to be liked. We want people to understand us, to support us, and to cheer us on. But the truth is, if you're constantly seeking approval from others, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. People are unpredictable. One moment they'll lift you up, and the next they might let you down. But God is constant. His love for you doesn't waver. His plans for you are unshakable. When you live for God's approval instead of people's, it changes everything. You stop worrying about what others think and start focusing on what God thinks. You stop striving to fit into someone else's mold and start becoming the person God created you to be. The Bible tells us in Galatians 1:10, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. That verse is powerful. It reminds us that we can't serve two masters. We can't live for God and live for people's approval at the same time. I think about Jesus. He wasn't concerned with what the crowd thought of him. He didn't adjust his message to make it more popular or convenient. He spoke the truth even when it was hard for people to hear. He stayed true to his mission even when it meant facing criticism, rejection, and betrayal. Why? Because he wasn't living for people's approval, he was living for God's purpose. In the same way, you need to stay focused on what God has called you to do. There will be times when people don't understand your choices. They might question your decisions or criticize your actions. But you can't let that distract you. You have to remember that their opinions don't determine your destiny, God does. Maybe you've been holding back because you're afraid of what others might think. You feel God leading you to take a step of faith, but you're worried about how it will look. Let me encourage you, don't let fear of people's opinions keep you from stepping into your purpose. God has placed dreams in your heart and gifts in your life for a reason. He didn't give them to you so you could hide them away. He gave them to you so you could use them to make a difference. Sometimes living for God's approval means making tough decisions. It might mean saying no to something that's popular but doesn't align with your values. It might mean walking away from relationships or situations that are holding you back. It might mean taking a stand for what's right, even when it's not the easy thing to do. It's not always comfortable, but it's always worth it. When you prioritize God's approval, He will guide your steps. He'll open doors no one can shut and close doors that aren't meant for you. He'll bring the right people into your life, people who support you, encourage you, and align with your purpose. And He'll give you the strength and peace you need to keep moving forward, even when the road gets tough. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't have to defend your choices or try to convince people to understand your journey. Your calling is between you and God. As long as you're walking in obedience to Him, that's all that matters. When you shift your focus from pleasing people to pleasing God, you'll feel a new sense of freedom. You'll stop worrying about what others think and start living with confidence. You'll realize that you don't need their approval to be happy or successful. You only need God's favor, and His favor is all-encompassing. So let go of the need for everyone to agree with you. Let go of the fear of disappointing others. Trust that God's plans for you are good, even if they don't make sense to everyone else. Step boldly into your purpose, knowing that He is with you every step of the way. God has called you to live a life of purpose, not popularity. He's called you to make a difference, not just fit in. When you live for His approval, you're setting yourself up for a life of peace, joy, and fulfillment, a life that's not swayed by the opinions of others, but firmly grounded in His love and His plans for you. Let me remind you today, you are valuable, you are loved, you are chosen, but so many of us live as though we're not. We give so much of ourselves to others that we forget to value who we are. We put ourselves last on the list, thinking it's the right thing to do, but God didn't create you to live a life of constant sacrifice without rest, peace, or joy. He created you as someone worthy of care, love, and respect, starting with how you treat yourself. I think about this: how often do you put yourself on the back burner? You prioritize everyone else, your family, your friends, your job, but when it comes to taking care of your own heart, your own needs, you brush them aside. Maybe you think, I don't have time for that, or it's selfish to think about myself when so many people are depending on me. But let me tell you something, friend, you can't pour into others if you're running on empty. You can't give your best to the people you love if you're not taking care of yourself. The Bible says in Mark 12:31, love your neighbor as yourself. Did you catch that? As yourself. That means you can't fully love others the way God intended unless you love yourself too. It's not about being prideful or self-centered. It's about recognizing your worth as a child of God. He created you in His image, and He calls you His masterpiece. That's not something to take lightly. It's something to honor, to steward, and to protect. Valuing yourself means understanding that your time, your energy, and your peace are precious. It means being intentional about how you use them and who you give them to. There are people in your life who genuinely care about you and want the best for you, but there may also be people who take advantage of your kindness. They'll keep asking and taking until you have nothing left to give. That's why it's so important to set boundaries, not because you're unkind, but because you know your worth. Think about Jesus. He was compassionate and loving, always ready to help those in need. But even he set boundaries. He didn't spend all his time with the crowds. He took time to rest, to pray, and to be with his closest disciples. He understood the importance of balance. He knew that to fulfill his purpose, he had to protect his time and energy. In the same way, you need to create space in your life to recharge, to seek God, and to take care of yourself. Maybe you've been feeling guilty about saying no. Maybe you've been thinking, if I don't do it, who will? But let me tell you something, you're not responsible for carrying every burden. You're not called to solve every problem or meet every need. That's God's job. Your job is to be obedient to his leading and to trust that he'll take care of the rest. When you say no to something that isn't right for you, you're not letting anyone down. You're making room for what God has planned. Valuing yourself also means speaking kindly to yourself. How many times do we let negative thoughts take over our minds? I'm not good enough. I'll never measure up. I don't deserve better. Those thoughts aren't from God. They're lies meant to keep you stuck. God says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. He says you're more than a conqueror. He says his plans for you are good, to give you hope and a future. Start replacing those negative thoughts with his truth. Speak life over yourself. Declare, I am valuable. I am loved. I am loved. I am worthy of good things. When you start valuing yourself the way God values you, it changes everything. You stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop allowing people to treat you poorly. You start making decisions that honor who you are and who God created you to be. And you know what happens? You become a better friend, a better parent, a better spouse, a better leader. You have more to give because you're giving from a place of strength, not emptiness. Let me encourage you today, don't wait for someone else to validate you. Don't wait for the world to tell you that you're enough. God has already declared it. Start living like you believe it. Take time to rest, to dream, to do the things that bring you joy. Set boundaries that protect your peace. Speak life over yourself and trust that as you value who you are, you're honoring the one who created you. God has amazing things in store for you, but you can't step into them if you're constantly running on empty. Value yourself, not just for your sake, but for the sake of those around you. When you take care of yourself, you're better equipped to love others, to fulfill your purpose, and to live the abundant life God has promised. Remember, you're not just anyone, you're a child of the Most High God, and that makes you worth it. Let me remind you today, it's okay to walk away from things that no longer serve your purpose. It's okay to let go of relationships, habits, or situations that are keeping you from becoming who God has called you to be. Too often we hold on to things out of fear of change, fear of the unknown, or fear of disappointing others. But sometimes the best thing you can do for your future is to release what's holding you back. You see, life is full of seasons. Just as the trees let go of their leaves in the fall, there are moments in your life when you need to let go of what's no longer serving you. It's not because you're ungrateful for the past or because you don't care. It's because you're making room for the new things God wants to bring into your life. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3:1, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens sometimes. That season is about stepping into the new, and to do that, you have to let go of the old. Letting go doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're making a conscious choice to prioritize your peace, your purpose, and your growth. It's not always easy. In fact, it can be one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But when you release what's weighing you down, you'll find freedom like never before. You'll discover that God's plans for you are so much bigger and better than anything you're leaving behind. Maybe there's a relationship in your life that's no longer healthy. You've tried to make it work, but it's full of negativity, drama, or unrealistic expectations. You feel drained every time you're around that person. Let me tell you, it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to take a step back. You can love someone and pray for them without allowing their behavior to steal your peace. Or maybe it's a habit or mindset that's holding you back. You've been carrying the weight of fear, doubt, or insecurity for too long. You've been telling yourself, this is just how it is. I can't change, but that's not true. The same God who created the universe lives inside of you, and He's given you the strength to overcome anything that's keeping you stuck. Don't let your past dictate your future. Let go of what's been holding you back and step into the newness of life that God has for you. Sometimes letting go means walking away from a situation or opportunity that doesn't align with your values or calling. Maybe it's a job that's taking you away from your family, or a business deal that doesn't feel right in your spirit. You might think, but what if I don't get another opportunity like this friend? If God is leading you to let it go, trust that He has something better in store. He won't ask you to release something without having a greater blessing waiting for you on the other side. Think about Abraham in the Bible. God asked him to leave his home, his family, and everything familiar to go to a land that He would show him. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but he trusted God enough to let go of the old and step into the new. Because of his obedience, God blessed him beyond anything he could have imagined. The same God who was faithful to Abraham is faithful to you. When you let go and trust Him, He'll lead you to places of greater blessing, purpose, and fulfillment. Letting go doesn't mean you have to do it alone. God is with you every step of the way. He's your strength, your comfort, and your guide. When you feel uncertain or afraid, lean on Him. Pray for His wisdom and peace. Surround yourself with people who will support and encourage you on your journey. And remember, it's okay to take it one step at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to trust that God does. So today, take a moment to ask yourself, what's holding me back? What's weighing me down? What is God asking me to let go of so that I can step into the next season of my life? It might be uncomfortable, but don't let fear keep you from your destiny. Trust that God's plans for you are good. Trust that He's leading you into something greater. And trust that as you release what's no longer serving you, you're making room for the new blessings He has in store. God has incredible things in store for you, opportunities, relationships, and breakthroughs you can't even imagine. But to receive them, you have to let go of what's behind you. Don't hold on to the past out of fear or guilt. Instead, step boldly into the future, knowing that God is with you and that His plans for you are greater than anything you could ever dream of.